You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Tristan, podcast number 1, August the 3rd, day after my dad's birthday. Okay, we've got coffee cup and award and plant and that thing. So we all hear the narrative, we all hear the story. Investment firms like BlackRock or Blackstone, they're buying up entire towns, not just homes, not just subdivisions, not streets. They're buying up entire towns. And they're displacing the average home buyer. Can't buy them anymore. That's why the market's going so crazy. A lot of stories out there like that. That's what we're gonna dig into today. I've got 3 articles here. What we're going to talk about is what are the actual numbers of institutional investors like companies like Blackstone or BlackRock? How many homes are they actually buying? What homes are they buying? Are they impacting the marketplace? I'm going to give you an example of some properties here in Seattle, near Amazon in Seattle, that Blackstone has just recently purchased. And also a little bit of a background on companies that Blackstone is buying that also owns homes. So yes, there is some of this institutional investment going on, but one of the stats that I'm going to share with you today kind of will give you the overall figure of, oh, okay, this is the percentage the institutional investors own of residential homes for rent. Because that's what a lot of this comes down to, right? Is they're buying up all the rental homes. There's going to be no homes left for people. That's not exactly true, but are they buying up some? Yeah, you're going to have to stay here and find out. All right. Before we jump on in, if you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. What qualifies me to read about this stuff? I am the owner and managing broker of Summit Properties Northwest. I'm also the owner and certified appraiser, SRA approved appraiser with Reynolds & Kline Appraisal, 2 real estate companies here in Bellevue, Washington. But more importantly, I read the news. So let's do that. What do you say? Enough of the chit chat. Investment firms aren't buying all the houses, but they're buying the most important ones. Now, who's to say what the most important homes are? We'll get into it. It's an interesting, this is an article written by somebody, this is somebody's opinion, and it touches on a lot of the things that I think we're concerned with, which is corporate America buying up all the homes? Median price of an American house has increased by 28% over the last 2 years. Averaged out, that's roughly, you got it, 14% a year. That's some crazy appreciation. That's on the high end for real estate, right? As pandemic-driven demand and long-term demographic changes send buyers into crazed bidding wars. All right, we know about that. Might the fact that corporate investors snapped up 15% of U.S. homes for sale in the first quarter of this year have anything to do with that? Wall Street Journal reported in April that an investment firm won a bidding war to purchase an entire neighborhood worth of single-family homes in Conroe, Texas. I don't know where that is. Part of a cycle of stories drumming up panic over Wall Street's increasing stake in residential real estate. We hear that story, and they try and get you worked up with, oh my gosh, they're coming for your city and your town and your street too. Then came the backlash as cool-headed analysts. It's okay. Nothing's going to happen to your street. Cool-headed analysts reassured us that big investors like BlackRock remain insignificant players in the housing market compared with regular old American families. Don't you feel better already? Just hearing regular old American families? Just makes you feel good, doesn't it? The truth, because we just want to hate corporate America, right? And here's the deal. We're somewhere in between on this one. The truth is, between the two, we can panic and acknowledge Wall Street's small role at the same time. All right, they're doing something. Do we need to be wildly worried about it? No. Do we need to be concerned about it? Yeah, I think so. Let's keep going. Although the number of houses being purchased by mega investors is currently not enough to move the market in most parts of the country, these firms' underlying structural advantage is profound and growing. Let's focus on Invitation Homes. Remember that name, Invitation Homes, a $21 billion publicly traded company that was spun off from Blackstone. That's one of the big names, Blackstone and BlackRock. The world's largest private equity company, not to be confused with Black Pebble, which was also a name considered when Blackstone went off from BlackRock. I remember reading that story. They're all kind of intertwined, right? Okay, the world's largest private equity company in 2017. Invitation Homes operates in 16 cities, with the biggest concentration in Atlanta, where it owns 12,556 homes. You might think, oh my gosh, that's so many. No. Though that's not much compared with the 80,000 homes sold in Atlanta each year. Invitation Homes bought 90% of the homes for sale in some zip codes in Atlanta in the early 2010s. All right, so what was going on in the 2010s? Well, the real estate market had absolutely tanked, and the only people buying up homes were basically institutional investors because they were the only ones that had cash. The rest of us were cash poor, shall we say? Yes, and I include myself in there because I had a couple of homes go sideways, couldn't afford, really super expensive divorce, keeping up maintenance, keeping up rents while rents went down and property values just tanked. So we all got used to the words short sale and foreclosure because that's what happened. While normal people typically pay a mortgage interest rate between 2% and 4% these days, Invitation Homes can borrow money far less. It's getting billion-dollar loans at interest rates around 1.4%. In practice, this means that Invitation Homes can afford to tack on an extra $5,000 to $20,000 to the purchase price of every home, while getting the house at the same actual cost as the typical homeowner. That's one way of looking at it. The other way is institutional investors looking at it as just basically a straight up asset class. There's no amenity appeal, which is, I get to live in this beautiful, wonderful house and raise my children here. Oh, this is going to be great. That's the amenity component. Then an institutional investor is like, all right, what is this going to return to me? What's my return? Wildly different things. So the cost of buying it, okay. While Invitation Homes uses a mixture of debt and cash from renters to buy houses, its offers are almost always all cash, which is a big leg up in a competitive market. What do I see here locally? I don't see them buying here locally in Seattle many single-family homes. And I think the reason for that is our single-family homes are expensive enough now where you don't have that upward rising ability, and the rents on single-family homes here in Seattle on the east side, they aren't commensurate enough with the capital outlay you have to do to make these things go. So you're looking more in neighborhoods like in Atlanta where homes are less expensive and yet you still get decent rent. And there's also a growth component. Need to have that ability to have future growth. Well, you've got that in certain areas of Seattle that's happening already. And we're going to talk about a transaction that on the surface looks crazy expensive. But when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, here's why they're doing that. So one way to think about Invitation Homes' business strategy is to consider the value of the properties the firm is buying relative to the rents they charge, because that's exactly what they're doing. How much can they have in capital appreciation and in the home appreciating? And how much are rents going to be able to move up? According to recent SEC disclosure, Invitation Homes' portfolio of homes is worth a total of $16 billion after renovations. And the company collects about $1.9 billion in rent per year. That means it takes only about 8 years of rental payments to pay back a typical house that Invitation Homes has bought. Okay. The usual rule of thumb for evaluating a fair sale price, says Kundar Kishore, professor of economics at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, is that price to rent ratios are around 20-1. So that's where here in Seattle, those ratios don't make any sense. When price to rent ratios are very high, it makes more sense for consumers to rent than to buy. And when they are low, it makes more sense to buy than to rent. Invitation's Home is getting deals twice as good as a typical home buyer, shows that it's not just buying any homes. Here's the thing that this article is kind of pointing out. It's buying the specific houses with the greatest potential to be wealth building for the middle class. These aren't low-end homes. They're not high-end homes. Middle-class homes. Homes that middle-class America needs and that they know they can rent out to middle-class America. It's not exactly accurate that investors are buying every single-family house that they can find. In fact, in most neighborhoods, they're not buying any. So they're not buying every single family house they can find, as some have suggested. If that were true, their market share in the United States wouldn't be a piddling 15%. Okay, here's your first clue. I've heard anywhere from 10% to 15%. That is their market share. It's not 30% of all homes. It's not 50%. It's not 75%. Any of those numbers, they would have the ability to rock the market. We're talking 10 to 15%. That is their market share. Institutional investors throughout the United States, that is their market share of the homes that we're talking about. They're really buying up the stock of relatively inexpensive single-family homes built in the 1970s in growing metro areas. That's what they're buying. They mostly ignore bigger and more expensive houses, especially ones that are move-in ready, because they get a little bit of a bang when they are able to renovate something, or they've got economies of scale that they can make these purchases with, right? Wealthy boomers and the nation's finance and tech bros nab those products, the expensive homes that are move-in ready. And they're also ignoring cities with stable or shrinking populations like Providence and Pittsburgh. So they're going after a specific demographic, right? Affordable, middle-class America homes in cities that are growing. So you've got the ability to probably bump up those rents. And at the end of the day, when you sell a property, make a little bit of money. But investors are depleting the inventory of the precise houses that might otherwise be obtainable for younger working and middle-class households in the city where those workers can easily find good-paying jobs, like Atlanta, 22% of home purchasers according to Redfin, Charlotte, 22%, and Phoenix, 20%. So we're saying institutional investors, 22%, 22%, and 20% in some pretty big markets. More importantly, they're able to scour those markets scientifically and systematically to make cash offers on the most attractively priced properties. While normal people buy houses when they actually need to move somewhere, savvy investors buy houses several years before a bunch of people need to move into an area. Whether they're tracking where major employers are building new offices or looking at public school enrollment data, being ahead of the market gives big firms a big leg up. Plus, they've got the capital to do it. And they will typically go hard when the market is going hard, which is, say, the last 2 years, 28% appreciation, roughly averaged 14% a year. And in case you're assuming that converting houses to rentals would flood the market and bring down rents, don't get your hopes up. As Invitation Homes tells its investors, we operate in markets with strong demand drivers, high barriers to entry, and high rent growth potential. All right, so you got plenty of demand. They're getting in line just with a bunch of other buyers as well. High barriers to entry. So they're not talking about super cheap homes. They're not talking about low-end homes, and high rent growth potential because of the cities and the economic makeup of those cities' job markets, right? While renting might make sense for some people, especially people who move a lot, it often sucks, particularly in the United States, where we don't have especially strong protections for tenants. Here we go. The business strategy of the country's biggest landlords, Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rent, does not seem to be making rent with us so delightful that if my tenant has to move to cities, they'll specifically seek out another property owned by our company. That's not what they're doing, is the point of this article. Based on reports from Reuters, the New York Times, and The Atlantic, it appears to be closer to squeeze our tenants for every penny, avoid making repairs, let black mold and raw sewage accumulate, and count on the fact that moving is a huge expensive hassle. All right, that first few 4 or 5 details probably happened on a couple of deals. All right, you got some black mold. Took them a while to get to it. Got to rip out some drywall, go through there, clean it up, bleach it out, whatever. Maybe they got somebody who's slow on making repairs. Okay. But if you're a big landlord like this, are you really going to have these things ongoing all the time? No, you're probably not. But you're going to have, if you deal with enough houses, you're going to deal with some stories like this. Raw sewage accumulate. Yeah, you're going to have sewer lines break if you own enough homes. And guess what? The raw sewage is going to accumulate in the basement. Maybe you might not be able to get to it until said raw sewage accumulate from the break is repaired. And count on the fact that moving is a huge, expensive hassle. It is. I hate moving. It is the worst. Let's see. I got to take all this stuff that I never use, put it in boxes and either put it in storage or put it in my new house so I can never use it there. Because all I really ever use is like a TV and a laptop and some clothes, some shoes, some tools, a lamp, kitchen stuff, shoe polish, fishing gear, hiking gear, camping gear. Man, I got a lot of stuff. I need all this stuff. Climbing equipment. Oh, the list goes on. Our current shop vacs, I just forgot about shop vacs. Oh, I got stuff. We all got stuff, right? That's why it's such a huge, expensive hassle. Stuff. Kids stuff. Oh, I just got rid of all my kids stuff because I'm like, hey, can you take this to your place? Do you mind? I'm cleaning out the house, doing a renovation. Do you guys mind taking this? That makes moving that much easier when you don't have kids around anymore. Our current system of encouraging homeownership is by no means perfect, and it places a lot of unnecessary risk onto the balance sheets of the middle class. But wait a minute. The corporate America investment firms, they take that same risk too, and they pay cash, cold hard cash. They're not leveraging all this. They're leveraging it kind of on the back end with the amount of with the capital they borrow at their 1.4%. Is that an accurate number? I want to know. Is that accurate? So we're talking about home ownership, balance sheets of the middle class, but it's worked out financially for most of the people who've been lucky enough to own a home. The implicit and explicit subsidies the government has given to Americans buying their first homes has been the biggest handout the American middle class has ever received, a handout notably denied to Black Americans for much of the 20th century. One explanation for the current size of the racial wealth gap. Okay. I don't think you can argue some of that. I don't think you can argue that lending practices and redlining over the years haven't happened. Those did happen. We just got to kind of deal with that. And yep, that's there. So Lori Goodman, Vice President of Housing Finance Policy at the Urban Institute, points out that policymakers could take steps to level the playing field between investors and the rest of us. She told me that buyers who need to borrow money using FHA financing or those who need a rehab loan for a fixer-upper have a particularly tough time competing against Wall Street firms. Okay, yes, you do. And in a hot market, very difficult. You're probably not going to be able to purchase a home. FHA paperwork often gets delayed, slowing down the purchase process. And you've got an appraisal issue there. It's not as bad as it used to be. There's some more restrictions. FHA takes longer. People don't want to accept an FHA offer because typically it's 3.5% down versus 100% down in the issue of somebody offering cash, or conventional where it's 20% down. So an FHA buyer is just weaker by nature. They've got a much smaller down payment. They're thinner all the way around, not physically, but financially in the transaction. So that's a solvable problem. And loans for properties that need renovations, Goodman says, are both cumbersome and expensive because they're unusual. And as you have a transaction that is unusual, there's more risk. The more risk there is, the more expensive that financing is going to get. That's just how this works. Rethinking the process is, here we go. Are we reimagining and rethinking in a housing article? It seems like we are. Rethinking the process for FHA and rehab loans could put individuals on a more equal footing, she explained. Or those buyers need to be looking in slightly different markets. FHA, first-time home buyer, looking in markets where you don't have the same criteria. That's the reality of what they should be doing. That's not necessarily always going to happen. Maybe you've got a job in a market that's, more expensive, like Seattle, and there's less chance that you're going to be able to purchase a home in that market. These are all just realities. So what we are talking about is we're talking about constricting the supply of middle class America affordable homes. If you don't want all of America's land and housing to end up in the portfolios of the 1%, there's ultimately one very simple solution: tax the rich. All right, we seem to always end up with this type of solution here. I don't think that's the solution. If you look at the hardcore numbers on taxing the rich, you might come away with a little different perspective, right? But this is always just tax the rich. I'm not rich. Tax those MFers. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's not how this works. After all, the companies buying the houses are ultimately owned by people, or in some cases, universities and churches. Let's throw churches under the bus too, which are their own cans of tax-advantaged rich people worms. All right. Rich, at the same time, the working class is going hungry. Are they? All right. There might be an argument to be made there, but that seems a little dramatic, doesn't it? At the same time, the working class is going hungry. Rich people are doing so outstandingly well that they are running out of easy places to park their cash, which is why they're buying 2,000 square foot houses in the Phoenix suburbs via their ownership stakes in these funds. There's also an argument to be made that smart people are investing their hard-earned dollars in areas like the Phoenix suburbs, where you can get a really nice home, 2,000 square feet home in the Phoenix suburbs, for substantially less than in other similar type cities around the U.S. So that just makes those investors smart investors. You see how we can kind of analyze this from a couple of different perspectives here? This is all part of a long-standing trend. As inequality in the United States increases, the financial elite invests less in the types of things that could create jobs. Okay, we're just going to let this go here because I don't feel like arguing about this kind of stuff. So things that could create jobs like research and development or new factories. Okay. And more into directly extracting wealth from the working class. One way to do that: become their landlords. Okay. We've taken a giant leap from institutional investors, wiping out the middle class America by becoming their landlords. I don't see that as a real cause and effect thing, but if you want to make an argument there, okay. All righty then. I see it more as institutional investors looking at real estate as a high returning asset class right now. And so they're going hard. That's what big companies do. So yeah, for smaller people, not short people, not small people, but the single investors, the typical husband and wife, or however we're supposed to say that. I don't think we can make reference to anything about family anymore. People with offspring, multi-generational. I think all those words are, banned and outlawed by somebody out there. I'm probably not supposed to say any of those, but only in the instance of advertising for housing, right? So, all right. So that is one. The reason I read this article is not because we're talking about the working class going hungry and universities and churches being tax advantaged rich people worms, cans of worms, but more from the standpoint of, okay, there is a little bit of this going on. Maybe it's not from exactly this perspective, but let's look and see a real life example of what's going on here in Seattle. So the second article is titled "Apartment Properties Near Amazon Seattle Headquarters Trade Hands for Near Record $701,000 per unit." Per unit. This is an apartment complex. They're paying almost $750,000 per door. Per door. All right. People who think Seattle's best days are behind it haven't checked in with the Blackstone Group. Okay, what do we have here? King County on Friday posted a deed showing that a limited liability company, an LLC, affiliated with a New York City headquartered global investment company, paid a Goldman Sachs LLC nearly $302.8 million for 2 apartment buildings near Amazon.com Incorporated South Lake Union headquarters in Seattle, SLU, South Lake Union. It's the largest multifamily transaction so far this year in King County. In July, a downtown Bellevue asset sold for $232.5 million. All right, that's cool, but we're talking about the Seattle one. Goldman was the equity partner of Greystar, which 3 years ago developed the 24-story Ascent property, which is on Republican Street in Seattle, and the 7-story Marlowe next door. What are you going to call this building? We're going to call it the Marlowe. We've got the Marlowe, and just over there, the Ascent. Not descending, ascent. We're on the ascent. The Justin Co. of Seattle managed development of both. Ascent has 251 units, and Marlowe has 181. The combined per unit price of $700,810 is a near record for the region. Tower 12 in downtown Seattle, which sold in 2017 for $719,649 per apartment, still holds the record. That's the record holder. Whew. $720 a door. We had a blip in the real estate market in 2017. When we were appraising in 2018 and 2019, we'd always look back and go, look what they paid for this thing back in 2017. What a premium. There was just this period in time where you just had these massive sales prices. The market did kind of a run up and then kind of a run back down. And it was kind of a really hot anomaly time period. So the Puget Sound region's apartment market bounced back from pandemic lows during the first half of the year, with Seattle's vacancy rate falling to 3.2% in June. That's a 4.4% percentage drop since December. So down from 7.6% down to 3.2%. So basically dropping in half, right? More than half. The company also reported that fewer properties are offering free rent to lure tenants. Neither Ascent nor Marlowe are offering free rent, leasing agents at the property said. The agent at Ascent said a one-bedroom measuring 743 square feet. How big is 743 square feet? Think of a 3-car garage that is, call it 24 feet deep by 20 feet by 60 feet. Something along those lines. You are somewhere 600-700 square feet there, right? So a 600 to 700 square foot, we're back. I skipped a paragraph here. So a one bedroom measuring 743 square feet, about the size of an oversized 3-car garage, 743 square feet is being offered for $3,134 a month. And an 1,100 square foot 2-bedroom on the 22nd floor, you can have that for a cool $5,068 per month. All right. So 1 bedroom, 743 square feet, $3,100 a month. 1,100 2-bedroom, high up on the building, $5,068 per month. So that gives you an idea of the numbers going into the $700,000 per door on this purchase. 1 bedrooms at Marlowe are between 600 and 700 square feet, and they're renting between 2,600 and 2,800. It's affordable relative to the Ascent. The asking rent for a 2-bedroom that measures 1,025 square feet is $4,400 per month for a 2-bedroom apartment, just a little over 1,000. Now, granted, this is in basically Amazon headquarters. It's right there. You got all the downtown stuff. You're close to the freeway. But then again, you've got all the downtown stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, some of the less opulent stories that I do here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, well, this isn't too far from that. But again, you got Amazon there. So it's a quick walk to your office and to Lake Union and all the other cool stuff. Okay. So that's an idea of a purchase that Blackstone has made recently. Blackstone bets $6 billion on buying and renting homes. Deal for Home Partners of America, owner of 17,000 homes in the U.S., is the latest sign Wall Street believes housing market will stay hot. You've got institutional investors buying up companies that own like 17,000 houses. So Blackstone Group, $6 billion deal, 17,000 homes. Market's really strong. Okay. We go through some history there. Boring. Nobody cares. So the rental market showed signs of softness during the pandemic, especially in downtowns that saw an exodus of residents. But lately, rents, too, have begun to rise. Have I heard that before? Did somebody talk about that in some podcast in Seattle that rents are going to go through the roof? Have we talked about that? Is this new news? No, I talk about that all the time. Rents are going up, and they're going to go up a bunch. Median asking rents rose 1.1% annually in March to $1,463 a month across the United States, according to a report from Realtor.com. All right, so they're going up, but I think you're about to see some pretty, in spite of the numbers I just read to you on that silly two-project deal. I mean, those rents are crazy. Who can afford those rents? Would you like to rent for $5,000 a month? I would. I would love to not have an ownership interest and spend $60,000 a year on a property that I got to move out of and, move all my stuff. And I already told you how much stuff I had. Just some ridiculous stuff. Many analysts say that with home price gains showing little signs of easing, rents can continue growing throughout the U.S. as would-be home buyers are priced out of the sales market and are compelled to keep renting because they don't have an option. Can't afford to buy because things have gotten too expensive, but they'll keep on renting. Rents are going up. For all their recent activity, big institutional investors own about 300,000 homes a year. Oh my gosh, they own 300,000 homes in the U.S.? Sorry, a year, that whole year thing. They own 300,000 homes. Oh my gosh, this is shocking. What in the world is going on? All right, how many homes are there in the United States? There's like 300 million. How many of them are occupied full-time? A little over 100 million. Means there's a lot of second homes out there, right? All right, so 300,000 homes owned by institutional investors. What percentage of the single-family rental homes do you think that is? Take a guess. Is it 10, 15, 20%? Is it 30%? Is it 70%? Do we need to just be on the edge of our seat with fear? Nah, it's like 2%. Institutional investors own about 2% of single-family rental homes. This is according to a report by New York-based financial firm Amherst Pierpont Securities, LLC. With a name like that, you got to be able to trust them, right? About 85% of the single-family rental market is owned by investors with 10 or fewer properties. Let's talk about that for a second here. 85% of the single-family rental market is owned by investors with 10 or fewer properties. That means the United States single-family market is owned almost exclusively by landlords, mom and pop landlords. So when you hear knuckleheads like on the Seattle City Council talking about corporate America just screwing it to the tenants, that's not exactly true, is it? No, it's not true at all. The numbers are 85% of all the single-family homes out there owned by investors, 10 or fewer properties. And that is why I continually hammer home on the impact of all these rental restrictions. You're not dealing with corporate America on a lot of this rental housing for single-family homes. You might be in the apartment complexes, like the article we just read, because who else can afford 300 million big ones? Not too many mom and pop investors. Is mom and pop a word I'm not supposed to say anymore either? Am I not supposed to say? I could probably say pop because that's like a word for like Coke. But mom, I think that that's got to be a word that's going to be outlawed here soon, right? I mean, familial status. Do you have a mother? Yes, you do. All right. We're going to have to ban you from YouTube. You can't say that word anymore. Has it gotten that bad? No. But does it feel like it's heading that way? Yes. So Home Partners, founded in 2012, has a different business model from Invitation Homes and some of the other big firms in the single-family rental business. It gives renters the option to buy at a predetermined price at any time within 30 days' notice. They're the good-hearted enormous institutional investors, aren't they? Nah, they've got a plan. This is part of their exit strategy. And I think it said about 20% of home partners renters have ended up exercising their options to buy their homes. All right, that's cool. But you know what? Home partners, they're not doing this out of the kindness of their hearts. They're doing it because it makes sense. So many people will bend over backwards to make a deal with their tenants because they don't have to pay real estate commissions. They've already got somebody who is in the home, less likely to be sued. There's just a whole bunch of reasons where you want to sell to somebody that's already in there. You don't have to clean the home up after getting the tenants out and freshen everything up and risk having it be on the market for a few months, no rent, still having to pay your 1.4%, mortgage. So the person talking about home partners, renters, she said she expects that rate to increase because given recent home price appreciation, many home partners, renters buying today would likely be paying a price below current market value. Yeah, maybe. Who knows, right? I mean, you just don't know. Blackstone is buying home partners through an investment fund named Blackstone Real Estate Income Trust, which primarily raises money from small investors and tends to hold assets longer than the firm's opportunistic funds. That strategy is a sign that Blackstone thinks the housing market could housing market rally could last many years. Maybe it does. Maybe it goes for a run for a while. But there was a lot of institutional investors buying up real estate at the last crash, wasn't there? Right before the Great Recession hit? Yeah, you had this stuff going on. This kind of stuff happens in every single market. Are we seeing more of it now? Yes, we probably are. Why? Because you got some pretty damn good returns in real estate out there. I mean, everybody's talking about the multiple offer situation, low interest rates, no supply, big demand. Oh, this is going to go on forever until it doesn't, right? Home partners chose Blackstone's all-cash offer after a competitive bidding process. Are we talking about buying a company or a house? Let's go back. Home partners chose Blackstone's all-cash offer after a competitive bidding process. According to Blackstone, the deal is expected to close later this year. $6 billion. For a company that owns, 17,000 homes? All right. So after throwing all these numbers at you, do you feel like you have a better idea on ownership and impact of institutional investors, single-family homes, or just rental homes, rental units in the United States? So is it something to be concerned about? Not in a huge way, I don't think. In some neighborhoods, in some cities, it's going to have way more impact. Here in Seattle, I read to you the impact of what they just bought. They paid a buttload of money per door of 2 apartment complexes. All right, it's an institutional investment. Are they going to raise the rents? Yes, until the point where people no longer pay set increases. And that's just kind of how this goes. So when you hear, folks that are more leaning towards the Marxist or socialist side of things, and you hear them talking about corporate America landlord, know that is for the most part incorrect. A lot of it, 85% of the landlords own less than 10 properties. All right. So when you've constricted and told them that they're going to have to basically carry tenants throughout the entire pandemic, when they get the opportunity to boot out tenants and sell these homes, they can do that already. Because a couple of things here in our markets, you can either move into the home yourself. That's one way you can get a tenant out, or you can indicate that it's going to be put up for sale. That's another way you can move somebody out. Very few ways that you can actually legally move somebody out. And I think most landlords have been like, yeah, I want to get if there's some federal money coming my way for this joker of a tenant who hasn't been paying, I'm going to wait for that. I'm going to wait for that money to come through. So a lot of pressure being put on local government, state government, for all that federal money, that $47 billion in aid that the federal government has given to local and state governments to cover the back rent owed by so many tenants to their landlords, whether for legit reasons or, they're just sitting at home smoking doobie playing Xbox. That's my typical go-to. Because when I think of somebody being lazy, that's kind of what I think of somebody maybe doing. Maybe they're drinking beer. I don't know. But just smoking weed, playing video games, that just seems, not saying there's anything wrong with that, but that compared to working and being a productive member of society, there's something to be said for a hard day's work. And if you want to smoke a little doobie after that, that's your thing. But put in your hard day's labor. It's kind of what makes this go around, right? You got to pay to play. So that's where we sit. I see all these stories come through, and I always think to myself, I need to do a podcast on that. Maybe dispel a few of these myths and some of the data that really people are talking about. Is this happening? Yeah, but not in the way that we're spun to believe it is. And I watch a lot of orders come through Reynolds and Klein appraisal. I watch a lot of purchase and sale agreements get put together. We're small residential on both of those, things, real estate brokerage and real estate appraisal company. We don't see a lot of stuff come through with Blackstone or Black Pebble or BlackRock or anything with black in the title as far as corporate America goes. But then again, that's not how these deals go. They're not buying one-off homes. They're buying a bunch of homes. They're buying a big project. They're buying a, $700,000 per unit type project. Crazy. Those are different deals. That's a big, big commercial purchase versus buying one home at a time. And that's what I mainly work on. Residential stuff, right? Single family residential America. That's what most of this stuff is. And that's what most owners of these types of properties are. And so that's why this whole, all right, tenants don't have to pay, landlords do, for me has personally been so annoying because it's not corporate America that's had the responsibility put on them. Single family residential housing, it's been put on mom and pop. All right. So we're about at a time point where these moratoriums, they're going to be lifted. There's going to be some chaos. But in any market, there's always foreclosures. We're going to experience that here pretty soon. Yep, some people are going to get kicked to the curb, and that sucks. But you got to work your way through this one. You can't just go from having a moratorium to happy-go-lucky, everything is great, America. It's not how this works, right? Either which way, it's a news story that I'll cover for you right here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. All right. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for participating, however you do, whether it's hitting that like button, subscribing, all that good stuff. Thanks so much for being here. I will catch up with you soon. Until then, stay safe. We'll see you then. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.